Welcome back to the CDA Institute's Geopolitical Update. I'm Josh Malm, Director of Research and Analysis for the Institute. In this podcast, we'll provide analysis and insights on the most significant geopolitical and international security developments of the week. So grab your headphones and get ready for a concise but comprehensive update on the world's most pressing geopolitical issues. The CDA Institute encourages rigorous debate on national security matters through our events, research, and publications. On April 22nd, 2025, gunmen from the Resistance Front, TRF, a group tied to Pakistan-based Lashkar-e-Taiba, killed 26 people and injured 17 in Pahalgam, a popular tourist destination in Indian-administered Kashmir. Indian police have identified 3 suspects, including 2 Pakistani nationals, in what is now the deadliest civilian attack in the region in 2 decades. TRF, which emerged after India revoked Kashmir special autonomy in 2019, claims to be a local resistance movement, but is widely seen as a front for cross-border terrorism. In response, Prime Minister Narendra Modi vowed to track the attackers, quote-unquote, to the ends of the earth. He also took sweeping retaliatory steps, including suspending the decades-old Indus Water Treaty, closing the only land border with Pakistan, and revoking Pakistani visas. Pakistan has condemned the moves, calling the treaty suspension water warfare, and responded by closing its airspace to Indian airlines and halting bilateral trade. Both nations are hardening their stances, and this attack threatens to undo recent calm in the contested region. Both nations are hardening their stances, and the attack threatens to undo recent calm in the contested region and escalate an already volatile standoff between 2 nuclear-armed rivals. To unpack these latest developments in the India-Pakistan relationship and their implications for regional security, we'll be speaking with Dr. Sumit Ganguly, Senior Fellow at the Hoover Institution, and Dr. T.V. Paul, Distinguished James McGill Professor in the Department of Political Science at McGill University. So, for the first half of this episode, we'll speak with Dr. Sumit Ganguly before turning to Dr. Paul. A few days ago, militants attacked Indian tourists near Pahalgam in Kashmir, killing at least 26 people. India has since said that there were Pakistani elements to the attack. Now, this event, of course, has sparked tension between India and Pakistan, and Kashmir has long been a source of conflict between India and Pakistan. So with some of that context out of the way, Dr. Ganguly, I'm wondering if you can let us know what we know so far about the situation, the actors involved, and the responses from both India and Pakistan.
The Indian allegation is that this is a splinter group of the Lashkar-e-Taiba, an organization that Pakistan has long supported and is widely believed to have connections with Pakistan's counter-espionage and espionage agency, the Inter-Services Intelligence Directorate, ISID. The organization is known as the Lashkar-e-Taiba, or Companions of the Prophet. And they are widely believed to be located in a town called Muridka in Punjab, in Pakistani Punjab. And they have been operating with considerable impunity over the last 3 decades or so, and they were implicated in the November 2008 attack, or terrorist attack on the city of Bombay at least 3 important locations, one of them being the iconic Taj Hotel on the Gateway of India. So this time the Indians are arguing that it's a splinter group or a front of the Lashkar-e-Taiba called the Resistance Front that was responsible for the massacre of 26 tourists in this wonderful scenic meadow outside Srinagar, the capital of Kashmir. The immediate Indian response has been to temporarily suspend the Indus Water Treaty, which guarantees the flow of a certain amount of water from the headwaters into Pakistan of 6 rivers. If India goes through with this plan, it will have devastating consequences for Pakistani agriculture because much of Pakistan is quite arid. Pakistan, in turn, has blocked its airspace. So Indian airliners going to Central Asia or even to Europe have to take a much more circuitous and obviously costlier route because it burns up a lot more air fuel. Also, both sides have declared their military advisors in their respective countries, in Islamabad and in New Delhi, persona non grata, which means they have to leave promptly. Both sides have also significantly reduced their diplomatic presence in New Delhi and Islamabad. So matters are certainly ratcheting up.
Well, thank you for providing that context, Dr. Ganguly. How should we understand the significance of this latest escalation, and what does it suggest about the trajectory of India-Pakistan relations in the near or medium term?
Well, it is intriguing that the attack took place when the Vice President J.D. Vance happened to be in India. I have no evidence to back this up, but I can make an inference that this was very deliberately timed to attract global attention. And I think also that India had become a bit complacent because the prior attacks that had taken place had been mostly limited in scope, mostly pinpricks, with the possible exception of a few years ago of an attack on an Indian military convoy and a paramilitary convoy in a place called Pulwama, which killed a couple of dozen Indian paramilitary personnel. And that led to an escalation with India carrying out what it called a surgical strike into Pakistani territory, and Pakistanis shooting down an aged Indian MiG 21, but the pilot miraculously bailed out and ultimately was returned to India, which then brought down tensions. But I think this was a deliberate reminder on the part of Pakistan's security establishment that normalcy has not returned to Kashmir and that we can attack at will vulnerable targets like tourists. And the callousness and the cruelty of the attack is simply breathtaking in that we now have reporting in both the Financial Times and the New York Times that individual tourists were asked about their faith before being shot. So there's a particularly grisly quality to this attack.
Well, thanks, Dr. Ganguly. One final question. I'm hoping to provide a bit of further context for our audience. So I'm hoping we can step back in time a little bit here. Would you be able to maybe briefly go over some of the fundamental contours of the Kashmir conflict, and kind of elaborate upon some of the origins of the tensions between India and Pakistan and its significance for the current tensions?
Of course, that's a particularly relevant question, especially for an American audience that does not spend the bulk of its time thinking about the conflict between India and Pakistan. The origins go back to the time of British colonial withdrawal from the subcontinent as early as 1947, when Britain finally gave up its British Indian Empire. And at the time of Britain's withdrawal from the subcontinent, there were two classes of states in the Indian Union. One set of states were known as British India. These were directly ruled from London via New Delhi. And there was another set of states which were called the princely states, and there were 562 of them, which recognized what was called the paramountcy of the British Crown. And they were nominally independent, except in three areas: defense, foreign affairs, communications. Kashmir was one such princely state. The problem with Kashmir was that it was a Muslim majority state which abutted both India and Pakistan. India wanted to hold on to Kashmir, not because there were, there was massive deposits of rare earths or anything of that sort, but simply because Prime Minister Nehru of India wanted to demonstrate that a Muslim majority state could thrive in a predominantly Hindu country. And why? Because he was passionately committed to the idea of secularism. And Kashmir would be a living demonstration of Indian secularism, that all faiths, even in a predominantly Hindu country, could thrive. Pakistan, by the same token, wanted Kashmir because Pakistan was created as a homeland for the Muslims of South Asia. And since an adjoining state was predominantly Muslim, Pakistan felt that its identity was incomplete without Kashmir. And almost immediately after the partition of India and Pakistan, um, uh, with Kashmir acceding to India, um, or actually, no, even before Kashmir had acceded to India, the Pakistanis um, launched a military operation under the guise of a tribal revolt. And when the marauders nearly reached the capital city of Srinagar, the Maharaja, the ruler, panicked and appealed to India for assistance. Nehru offered to provide assistance if two conditions were met. First, that he would have to sign, the Maharaja, the king, would have to sign what was called the instrument of accession, the legal document. And second, Nehru wanted to consult a man called Sheikh Muhammad Abdullah, who was the leader of the Kashmir National Conference, the largest popular organization and secular organization within the state. And only when Abdullah had granted his imprimatur to the instrument of accession that Nehru accepted the instrument of accession, sent in Indian troops to stop the advance of the tribals supported by the Pakistani army, but not before the tribals had managed to seize a third of the state. So India still controls about two-thirds of the state. Pakistan controls about a third of the state. Pakistan subsequently in 1965 initiated another war, which ended in a stalemate and with no territorial adjustments. Similarly, in 1999, it launched another war in a region called Kargil, shortly after the Pakistani and Indian nuclear tests of 1998. And on this occasion, even though the Indians had initially lost territory at considerable human and material cost, they managed to push back the Pakistani intruders. The Clinton administration played an important role in diffusing tensions when Prime Minister Nawaz Sharif interrupted the 4th of July vacation of President Clinton. And Clinton, at this point, to his credit, said borders cannot be changed in blood. And that the sanctity of the line of control, the de facto international border, must be maintained. And consequently, Pakistan at this point had no choice but to stand down, and the Indians managed to recapture the areas that the Pakistanis had seized in the initial assaults.
Dr. Paul, I'm wondering if you could explain what the key drivers behind the latest escalation between India and Pakistan are and how it might reshape the already fragile relationship moving forward.
Right. There are different audiences in this relationship, and conflict escalation using the strategy of non-state actor has been a big part of this conflict during the past, especially since 1989. So what is happening from the international level it was the visit of J.D. Vance to India. India is warming up, as you know, to the United States. Despite the trade frictions, there is quite a bit of strategic relationship going on with the U.S. plans to engage India with respect to China. And then, of course, Prime Minister Modi was going to was visiting Saudi Arabia. And this meant India's relationship with the Arab and Persian Gulf countries would increase. So every indication is that Pakistani trained infiltrators with the support of the army most likely entered India or some homegrown terrorist networks. Luxury Taiba is an offshoot of that, has already claimed responsibility, which definitely is a Pakistani-grown group. So for Pakistan, this is one way to keep the conflict alive. It has been a somewhat mellowed down, the shootings on the line of control for a period since 2019 when there was an upsurge. And so relative calm in the area. So Indian local tourists in particular have been going to Kashmir, where the weather is much better than the rest of India. And so this has provided an opportunity. You have a Maidan with a lot of tourists sitting and enjoying the sun. Suddenly the attack took place, and unfortunately they picked Hindus, and showing that also has got resonance to the kind of volatile politics India is going through internally. So the timing was good to prop up this this conflict again, so that it won't leave international attention.
Would you be able to describe how the ongoing tension in Kashmir, particularly with this latest event and ongoing tensions, might influence the broader geopolitical landscape in South Asia, and what roles external actors like China and maybe the United States might play in the region's stability?
So it's very intertwined with the US-China, India-China relationship, as well as broader South Asian role in the emerging geopolitical competition. What you notice is that India has a testy relationship with China despite a huge economic trade relationship. India imports a lot more than exports, imports machine tools and components for making the products that India then exports to the rest of the world. But the Chinese components are very much a part of it. And cheap products the Chinese manufacturers produce. So India is kind of a dumping ground for Chinese products, and Indians buy them in massive numbers given the kind of market size you have there. So the United States, despite Trump's tariff imposition, still wants to keep India as this swing state that it can really play some role in containing and balancing China. So Pakistan is a big part of that China-Pakistan alliance, which is actually has been going on since 1960s. And China has an interest in keeping Pakistan afloat for various reasons. So what India has now threatened, actually it has taken many steps. One is closure of some of the border for limited transit of people from both sides, and then visa cancellations. But most importantly, the water treaty, the Indus Water Treaty of 1960, that they had signed with the help of World Bank to share the Indus and its 5 tributaries. The water flows from the Himalayas, Ladakh region to the Indian Kashmir, and then to the Pakistani Kashmir and the rest of Pakistan, all the way down to the Arabian Sea. So this has been actually quite a generous agreement that India did with Pakistan, and it has been observing that, partly because of difficulty to dam it, but there are some threats to dam some of the rivers, the 3 rivers that India has more control over. But they are now saying that the Indus Treaty is gone, or in abeyance, which means they will not observe its particular provisions. It's very difficult to control the water. There's a lot of flooding in the monsoon season in particular. But the threat itself is enough to provoke Pakistan, because 80% of Pakistanis live on agriculture. And so if water is restricted in some fashion, that will affect Pakistan. In the meantime, China is building a huge dam, probably the biggest in the world, in the Brahmaputra River that comes first through China's Tibetan area, then it goes to India's Assam. And building that dam gives China a lot more control over the flow of water to India and Bangladesh. And so water politics, water conflict is fast becoming part of this strategy of the three parties involved here, including China. So if India does anything, then China can do harm to India there. But most worrisome is the possibility of an escalation. India, led by Narendra Modi, did such an escalation to an attack in 2019. It wasn't very effective, but it was politically good for him internally. He has to do something to give the impression he's tough on Pakistan. So I think the next few days you might see a limited strike. And that is the scary part, because both, as you know, both countries are nuclear armed. So there is a kind of a stability-instability paradox existing in this relationship, which means there is, at the nuclear level, big escalation is unlikely, or big war is unlikely because of the fear of nuclear escalation. But at the sub-strategic level, there is a possibility for these sort of attacks. So that encourages non-state actors in particular to resort to these attacks, thinking that there won't be an escalation. So if an escalation happens like that, Pakistan will most likely retaliate. And that retaliation could produce quite a bit of instability and danger of escalation. And we don't know where that will end up, but clearly that's when the great powers, other powers, US and all, will intervene diplomatically. And Pakistan's calculation has always been, in the past, the US will come to its rescue to intervene, because India is definitely militarily superior if there is a conventional war, and the crisis will then dissipate. So it all depends whether the Trump people want to be involved, but I'm sure they will be, because this is a region of significance to them too.
Dr. Paul, I appreciate you joining me today. Thanks for sharing your analysis and your thoughts with me. We appreciate your thought leadership here at the CDA Institute, and hopefully we can do this again sometime in the future. I appreciate your time, sir.
Okay, Josh, all the best.
Thank you very much. Take care.
That's all for today's episode. Thank you for tuning in, and be sure to join us next week as we delve into another week of global affairs.